The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, giving a press conference of response to the Supreme Court ruling this morning that it is illegal to export migrants to Rwanda. What do you make of all of that? Do you even understand what he's talking about with his treaties and his foreign courts? This was the Supreme Court in this country this morning. Still with me in the studio to try to make sense of this, TalkTV's chief political commentator, Peter Cardwell. Good to have you here, Peter.
Hi.
We're also joined by immigration lawyer Harjap Singh-Banghal, and we were so silent through all that. Not a moment of syllable did we utter, so I don't even know what Harjap's thinking. We're going to find out in a second down the line. We have columnist at the Telegraph, Madeline Grant, as well. Good afternoon to you, Madeline. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we start with Harjap, because this is meat and drink to you. This is what you do for a living. This morning, the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot deport illegal migrants to Rwanda because it's not safe, because it's the kind of country that sends migrants back to the countries that they have escaped from, thus exposing them to danger. So it's illegal, so you can't do it. What's happened since, as far as you're concerned?
Since then, not really much, just a sort of sound bites and determinations like we're seeing that we're going to make this work, we're going to send people on a plane, we're not going to let international courts, foreign courts block our path. But this wasn't a foreign court, this was a UK court. It's the highest court in the land. We can't even get past that, let alone the foreign courts. Then to stitch it all onto the ECHR or foreign legislation, that's not true, because in the Supreme Court ruling, it actually referred to the ECHR as well as 3 acts of the UK, the 1993 Act, the 2002 Act, the 2004 Act. So are we going to repeal all of these? This separate treaty that Rishi Sunak is talking about, where's the details? How is he going to ensure that that complies with UK law and does not breach the principle of non-refoulement, which is a new phrase of the day.
Non-refoulement, you can't send people back to the country that they've had to escape from with their lives in case you expose them to danger when they return. Non-refoulement, we know all about that now. We're all experts on that. Let's bring Peter Cardwell into this. Peter, I mean, it is hard to know, because Rishi Sunak has a terrific delivery, I think. He's very composed, he's very assured, he says things with great authority, he says it with such emphasis, and he says it in so measured a way that you think, oh, well, maybe, yes, there'll be a treaty, and then they'll do something to stop foreign courts intervening, and then the planes will take off in the spring, and that will happen. But does any of it make any real sense empirically, or not?
Maybe it will. Maybe it will happen. Maybe he'll get this through. What he wants to do now is to change, or to at least implement, a treaty with Rwanda to make clear that it is a safe country, that they will put things into law that would make sure that they don't repatriate people.
And may I just ask, could that not have preempted this morning's Supreme Court verdict? Is this what Suella Braverman was talking about?
Partially.
When she said there were things we could have done, there were all sorts of legal and legislative measures we could have undertaken to preempt the Supreme Court saying, no, but you didn't, you wouldn't listen.
Her argument is certainly that he's wasted a year and this could all have been sorted out previously. But what's really interesting is that you have, within literally a few sentences, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom saying the rule of law is fundamental to our democracy. And then he's saying that a court that we've been part of since the 1950s isn't fundamental to our democracy if they rule that this is unlawful and that it would be ignored. Now, there are a number of cases of a number of nations ignoring the ECHR. It is not unprecedented. It has happened before, but certainly it is a very interesting position to say that the rule of law is fundamental to our democracy, and then to say, look, we're going to put this through and the flights are going to take off, whatever any court.
But as Harjap has quite rightly pointed out, it's not the European Court of Human Rights that stopped it this morning. It's our court. It's the Supreme Court in this country.
But his point is essentially that if they want to do this policy, they want to change the law, essentially, and then if it is ruled, if it goes all the way to the ECHR, then it would change. The interesting thing, though, is the timescale of all of this. That takes ages. This policy has been around for over a year and a half, and it's only now got to the Supreme Court, and that was expedited. But in a year's time, we'll probably have a new government which will scrap this. So this has already become a massive electoral issue. Keir Starmer says he would scrap the plan. Rishi Sunak is going full steam ahead with it. It'll be fascinating to see. I mean, this will define his premiership.
OK, let's bring Madeline into this. Madeline Grant of the Telegraph. What's your take on this? You're not sitting here with us huffing and puffing and sighing and fidgeting. We can't see you. You're down the line. We don't know what you're doing. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just think that every day you think this can't get any worse for the government. And somehow they managed to top it today with the extraordinary judgment of the Supreme Court and the reaction to it. And, today I was in Parliament watching Prime Minister's questions, followed by a statement from James Cleverly. And, the opposition are really sort of cock-a-hoop about this. And you can see why, because, when the government finds that the most basic aspects of their plan have been so wholly rejected, and by a court based in the UK, a lot of the kind of the arguments that they're making don't necessarily counteract that fact. And meanwhile, the fact that whether or not Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper, what they might do when they're in power, this isn't even part of the discussion. This has completely dominated everything. And the overall air is one of, chaos and inaction and, a lack of success. And this is so very obvious to the public. There's absolutely no discussion of what the opposition would do. It just, the overwhelming impression is one of incompetence.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Harjap, if we break it down in any way we like, really, to the numbers involved, any numbers, really. So the amount of time it's taken, the number of illegal migrants currently sent by us to Rwanda, zilch. The amount of money it's cost, what are we saying it's cost?
About 140 million.
140 million pounds so far. So 140 million pounds so far. Result nil, absolutely nil. If you look at the amount of time, the number of lawyers involved, 36 lawyers currently working on it, according to Jeffrey Robertson, KC, on the show just earlier. The sheer kind of man and woman hours taken up ruminating and fulminating and debating and voting and God knows what on this thing that has amounted to absolutely nothing at all except an embarrassing white elephant, an albatross, or anything else you want to call it, a cross that everyone has to bear so far. You wonder about the wisdom, Peter, of just pushing on with it like this.
Yes, but the calculation from Rishi Sunak is this is a fundamental part, not just of his electoral mandate, but although some people argue he doesn't have one, but certainly from Brexit, from the 2019 mandate, and also it is one of his 5 pledges. So politically, were he to go back in this in any way, stopping the boats is down about a third down from this time last year. He's just got another one of them over the line today with inflation, which he talked a little bit about as well. It's really doubtful, I think, that the NHS plan will necessarily work by the 4th of January, but we'll see. So this is something that he slightly boxed himself into a corner. He inherited this from Boris Johnson, but nonetheless, it is something that he believes is needed to either win the next election if he truly believes that can happen.
Harjap, how does this affect the people who want to come and live in this country, the people who have arrived here, whether it's on small boats, whether it's through one of the few legal routes to get into this country? What happens now? Does this make everything even longer in the works, even bigger in terms of delays?
It doesn't affect the system because the system is broken already. So every year we get a Home Affairs Select Committee report which tells us the Home Office is not fit for purpose. It's taking 2 years to make a decision which can be done in 15 days. Under the previous governments in 2002 and 2003, asylum decisions were fast-tracked. 15 days, you'd have your decision done and dusted. Even your appeal wouldn't take that long. Now we're taking 2 years just to give a decision. You've got people here who are having to be housed in hotels because they're not given permission to work. So therefore you have a broken system, extra expenditure, no investment in the Home Office, and more importantly, the gangs aren't being caught. So it's almost like saying we're going to stop drug dealing by locking up drug users.
Yeah.
So you're going to stop people smuggling by locking up asylum seekers. That is not going to work as a deterrent. Plus the space in Rwanda is only 500 places. And as part of that scheme, we might have to take 200 Rwandans back. So we might be, that's in the agreement. So we might end up with a net of only 300 people. All of this posturing for 300 people.
No,
what are we
I don't get it. I just don't know. When I say the numbers, none of it stacks up.
What are we going to do with the 49,000?
How many people are currently in hotels here waiting for a verdict,
There's a
waiting to be able to... How many people?
Yeah, exactly.
So a backlog of what?
About 175,000.
OK, and this might send, if they do manage to push it through and they do change the law and they do cut us off from the European Court of Human Rights and spend all the money and take all the time, it might send 500 people max to Rwanda. How does any of this make any sense?
But the point is that it's a symbolic It's essentially saying...
Symbolic. What
it's
are people sitting at home trying to eat their dinner?
I get
or
it.
Make their dinner care about whether it's symbolic.
I totally
symbolic
get
of what is it?
It's meant to act as a deterrent. It's meant to say if you come to this country illegally, you could hypothetically be sent to Rwanda. There are a lot of people who support it. It is certainly something that Rishi Sunak has taken a massive political gamble on. Certainly the wisdom of it. And immigration is a touchstone issue for many, many people, and he wants to go ahead with this policy.
Madeline Grant, symbolic. I'm not taking issue with Peter Cardwell. I wouldn't dream of it. He's our political editor. I wouldn't dream of it. But symbolic, does that resonate with your Telegraph readers? Would they support something so expensive, so cumbersome? It's been a resounding, as you said, to use your word, failure so far. Would they support it because it's symbolic, or would they hope it would be more than that?
Well, I think that the idea behind it is that it would be one thing that you would do to try to disrupt the incentives of the criminal gangs, not the only thing that you would do by any means. I think that, I can't speak for all of our readers, but I think, they would support anything that would make it more difficult, because currently there is this extraordinary disconnect between what our international legal obligations are and the amount of migration and asylum that voters are willing to accept. And so far, no country in the world, not the UK, and also Europe is grappling with this problem too, has figured out a solution to this, fairly recent problem of the level of small boat crossings that have sprung up in the last 10 years. And I mean, I know this looks like a harebrained scheme, and perhaps it is, but I think that there is an increasing desperation for something to be done about this. And I think that, as the legal situation currently stands, we are at a place that is unacceptable to a great many voters.
Harjap, we heard the Prime Minister assert many times in that press conference that the number of people arriving is down by a third, that many arrests, did he say 20,000 arrests have been made, or 20,000 people have been sent back to other countries, many arrests have been made. Is that what you're seeing as you go about your work?
The numbers have come down, and that's due to the a lot less Albanians coming over, and that's perhaps the returns agreement has sort of kicked in relation to it. However, it's not going to make a big difference in relation to numbers coming over. It's
small boats are down a third.
That's
significant.
That's a fact, right?
But essentially, we could be in a situation next year where they go up again. So there's no permanent solution to the fact. There's no trend to show that this is a permanent sort of figure. What is problematic is the number of people being enforcedly removed. So that has gone down from 60,000 in 2010 and 2009 to removals to about 3,000. Now, the problem is 60,000 people coming over, or 50,000 people coming over a year isn't a problem if you're sending 60,000 back. The problem comes when that number of people being sent back dwindles down to 5,000, which it was in 2015, 3,000 odd last year. And in the government's figures, they actually count voluntary returns as removals. So if someone says, I've been here 10 years and I've had enough and I want to go back on my own, they'll put that into the removal figures. So perhaps there's a bit of sort of play in the figures there. But what I would say is they need to get removals back up to the levels that they were in 2009, 2010 and 2008, which is quite surprising because under a Labour government, more people were being sent back, and we traditionally, or a lot of your viewers will think that Labour are traditionally soft on immigration, and yet under a Conservative government, which is supposed to be hard on immigration, we've seen the removal numbers down. Now, the biggest deterrent is if your case is going to be decided in 15 days, and on the 20th day, you're back on a plane.
Yep.
There's no bigger deterrent than that. Once people know that we're going to be in the UK for 2 years, we ain't even get a decision for that, we'll be housed, we'll get permission to work, then obviously the gangs use that as a selling point. And once again, where are the gangs that have been caught? And where have they been sentenced? Only, I think, a couple of months ago, Belgium caught a gang.
Yes, that one big case.
Yeah, and I think
the guy supplying the dinghies.
Yeah, and I think he got about 8 years. He might be out in 4.
Yes,
That's not a big deterrent. We need to lock these people up for life.
Yes.
And we need to get these gangs, just as we're after drug dealers and the drug gangs, we need to get it with the same sort of enthusiasm.
Peter, one breaking news story today, Italians or Italy sending illegal migrants after some treaty to Albania. Couldn't we do that? Albania's a lot more convenient. You get a nice, cheap, easy jet to send them to Albania.
We have a deal with them.
We do. We have a returns agreement with Albania.
Right. Yes. What does that mean? To return Albanians, but not to send other people from other countries?
Yeah. Well, literally, we can send Albanians back. But what happened is when we negotiated a certain treaty in 2016, somebody forgot to negotiate return agreements with countries. We should have return agreements with about 100 countries. We've only got return agreement with about 6, 7 countries in the past 7 years.
Which countries should we have return agreements with that we don't?
Everyone. I mean, first of all, level, we should have return agreements with countries from South America, from Africa, from Asia. We don't have return agreements from a lot of countries. We have them with India, Pakistan. I think we have one with Nigeria, Albania is another one, Serbia is another one. But we don't have return agreements with a lot of people. And you can't return people without return agreements.
Is Italy doing with Albania what we hoped, or at least some people hoped we would be able to do with Rwanda? Is that the arrangement?
Yeah, that's the sort of
for the Italians.
thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And a lot of other European countries are looking at it. And a lot of other European countries will have had a look at today's decision and are now going to have to sort of work it out, because they are still governed by ECHR, and the European courts do apply to that.
Yeah.
So they will sort of now think, right, how are we going to do it? In principle, today's ruling says that sending someone to a third country to be processed is okay. The courts are okay with it. It's just that Rwanda failed to prove that they were safe enough and they wouldn't send people on because of evidence provided about what happened when Israel sent people to Rwanda. When they went back, the people went missing. Some were sent back to the countries, and some were re-trafficked again.
Yes,
so
yes.
it just wasn't safe enough.
And Peter, apparently the money that we have so far paid Rwanda stays in Rwanda. They don't give us a refund. They don't say, OK, well, you haven't been allowed to send anyone, so here's your money back. Even with the 10%, we'll take 10% off the top, but you can have the rest back. Why not? So why are they allowed to keep the money if they don't provide the service?
Well, that'll be part of the deal, and really, because it's not Rwanda's...
You call that a deal?
Well, it's not Rwanda's fault.
Sometimes I'm glad my father isn't alive to hear this stuff. Honestly, that's not the way he would have done business, let me tell you.
There's no 14-day money-back guarantee.
Exactly. Where's the money-back guarantee? I'm absolutely serious. I come from a business family. It's completely unthinkable that we give you the money up front in advance for a service that we don't even know we can legally obtain from you. And then when we can't obtain it, you provide zilch. We don't get the money back. What the hell? It's our money.
Well, Rwanda would probably argue, listen, I agree with you, Vanessa, but I think Rwanda would probably argue that the process was meant to happen. They put the structures in place. They've kept their end of the bargain. It's the UK courts
I don't blame Rwanda. Of course Rwanda would say that. I'm saying, how could they negotiate, in inverted commas, a deal, which is just a rancid deal, that if you don't get the product, you don't get your money back?
Well, perhaps you're on the same side as Suella Braverman.
Well, on this particular thing, in terms of getting your money back if you don't get what you think you're paying for, I certainly am. Madeline Grant, what will the Telegraph readers think about the fact that they're not going to get any of the money back from Rwanda, not a penny of it?
Well, I mean, again, I do not speak for all of the Telegraph readers, but I mean, the answer is obviously no one's happy about this. I mean, it's clearly a failure.
I mean, the word failure just absolutely reverberating from Madeline there. It's a failure, but of course, at the heart of all of this, Harjap, are people. They're just human beings. You know, they need to have their fate sorted out one way or another. They need to have somewhere to live. They're not usually here for a jolly. It's always been a very, very arduous and difficult journey, especially if they've come on small boats, isn't it?
I mean...
Yes.
Go on, Madeline,
Go on, Madeline.
So, I mean, I just think that I agree with that in principle, but you know, we live in a very complicated world, and we cannot possibly offer asylum to all the people who would fit the bill according to the current legal criteria. And I think at some point, you know, right now this is obviously a massive issue for the Conservative Party because they're the people who are in charge. But I think it will become very clear, whoever in the next administration, should that be Labour, that these rules were drafted in the time when the world was very, very different. And it's no longer compatible with what voters will tolerate, or indeed what our national resources could support.
I don't think the immigration system in this country has ever really worked. I think that, you know, you look at the legacy even back to Windrush, and you see so many problems. The problem that is the massive problem is the backlog. That is a huge problem of 175,000 people who need to be processed in some way, get an answer one way or the other. It's people coming in. Harjap knows this far better than I do, but politically, this is a massive issue. It's not going to go away if we send a few people to Rwanda or not. It's not going to go away in the next year. But Rishi Sunak is nailing his colours to the mast here, and this will be a huge election issue.
Harjap.
The Home Office is not fit for purpose. We know you are not going to get a good product if your machinery or your factory is not correct, and that is the problem. You're putting a burden, you're papering over the cracks. We need to knock it all down and rebuild it again. And like Peter said, it's never been right. It's not just 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. It's been like this since about the year 2000. So it hasn't been correct. We're trying to push on with it. We're fooling the British public. We're selling them a dream. In fact, we're going to do this. We know it's not going to get done. sort the machinery out before you do anything.
Just imagine if all the energy, all the money, all the planning and strategy that has gone into this so-called Rwandan solution went into clearing the backlog, employing the staff, revving up the structure,
Well, the government would say it's done
getting
some
it
of
going.
that. It's done, they have put more staff into this, and they would say that they've spent more money on it and prioritised it. But it is a very good point, Vanessa.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you so much.